in a nutshell, the United Nations got involved with the Palestine question because the United Kingdom, the mandatory power, asked it to get involved. This began in April 1947 in the form of a letter sent to the acting Secretary General, Victor Chu. And essentially the letter asked the United Nations for advice, how to transfer power at the end of the mandate, because the United Kingdom at the time envisaged withdrawing from Palestine by August 1948, which was subsequently brought forward to May 1948. And the reason why the United Kingdom asked the United Nations to get involved was because Palestine was a League of Nations mandate, and therefore it had a special international status. It was not like a crown colony, such as Kenya, India, Cyprus, or Ireland. So the United Kingdom could not simply adopt an act of parliament and walk out of the territory. It needed the role of the UN. It needed the consent of the United Nations. And we're in the Trusteeship Council chamber. Under the Charter, the normal way of modifying a League of Nations mandate is to place the territory under a trust territory, where the UN would act with the consent of the administering power. The Arab states in 1947 argued that the only alternative was to have an independent state. Once Britain left, Palestine should have become an independent state. This is what Ilan was mentioning with regard to UNSCOP. However, this is not what happened. The Arab states were outvoted at the UN General Assembly, and instead the United Nations Special Committee on Palestine was established. And it was established, its terms of reference were quite wide and included looking at the broader issues, such as the refugee question in Europe, British policy during the mandate, and the Jewish national home. And to cut a long story short, this United Nations Special Committee recommended a plan of partition with an economic union. There were then two subsequent smaller committees that looked at this issue in further detail. And on the 29th of November 1947, a majority at the UN General Assembly voted in favor of the partition plan. Now, this is crucial to understand. The partition plan envisaged a separate status, an international city for Jerusalem. It envisaged a joint economic board and two states, a Jewish state and an Arab state that would be independent from Transjordan. Crucially, the UN partition plan also had a lot. If you read the UN partition plan, Part A of the plan is steps preparatory to independence. And they actually set up a special unit here in the UN Secretariat called the Palestine Commission, which was separate to UNSCOP, and it was separate to the work of Count Folke Bernadotte and Ralph Bunche and others. So this is, if you like, envisaged how power would be transferred from the British mandatory authorities to the respective Arab and Jewish states in the partition plan. So there was a lot of work that had to be done, from sanitation to security to the legal system, etc. Now, what's really interesting is that in January 1948, so less than 2 months after the adoption of the partition plan, the UN partition plan requested that the United Kingdom cooperate with this commission. So it was legally obliged to cooperate with this commission. But in January 1948, for reasons that are not so clear, but one can perhaps guess why, the United Kingdom decided not to cooperate with the UN. So for about 6 months, this commission is sitting in New York, is not able to travel to Palestine. Only in April 1948 is an advance team sent to Palestine, headed by a UN diplomat called Pablo de Azcarate, whose father was a famous communist politician in Spain, who was expelled by Franco. And when he arrived in Lida airport, there was no one to collect him. He had to call the British military to send a transport. He was put in cell-like, prison-like conditions in the British military zone by the YMCA near the King David Hotel. And he had no one to really help him, so he just kept going around seeing all the different ambassadors who were still in the city. What happened then is Britain brought forward the end of the mandate on the 15th of May and withdrew all of its soldiers, about 100,000 troops, by the end of June. This meant the UN was unable to implement the partition plan. Ilan also mentioned that the United States got cold feet and came up with a trusteeship plan, but that was never put into effect. And in fact, the State of Israel was declared while there was a debate going on in the Security Council, and some of the Arab delegates expressed surprise that this was allowed to happen. No one was expecting that. They were still going on with these different UN committees expecting some kind of transfer of power. So I'll just conclude by pointing out that the United Nations was involved for 13 months before the 15th of May 1948. So one of the questions one might consider is, what if the United Kingdom had cooperated with the United Nations? Would things have turned out differently? Possibly not, but it's worth pondering. I'll leave it there. Thank you.